All right. Okay. All right. Sorry. Hi, everyone, and anyone who's online as well. I'm Ruth Boumphrey. I'm the Chief Executive of Lloyd's Register Foundation. Lloyd's Register Foundation is a charity. We're live with Robin. Hi. Hi, Robin. It's good to see you here. We didn't know you were joining us remotely, and that's even better. That adds to the global nature of the discussion. Can you hear us okay, Robin?
I can, and good morning, everybody. It's
brilliant.
Really nice to be here.
This is all working out in the end. This is great. It's lovely. Super. So welcome, Robin. So I'm Ruth Boumphrey. I'm the Chief Executive of Lloyd's Register Foundation. Thank you, everyone, for getting up early and making it through the queues to get in here into the room today. Lloyd's Register Foundation is a charity based in London, and we stretch back over 260 years of heritage, and our origins are in the shipping industry, where we had a mission to save lives, and that all comes from the sort of perilous nature of working at sea. You know, and back in the day, that was mostly a maritime, people working at sea in the maritime industry, and our mission remains today to engineer a safer world. And the way that we do that, the way that we engineer a safer world, is through the application and development of standards in engineering and also in education. So if you think about how do you get impact at scale, how do you make things safe at scale, how do you create those conditions at scale, you do that through the setting of standards. Science is about discovery, and much of the ocean science that's been discussed in this pavilion is all about discovery and new knowledge, and how do we, understand our world and create that create a good understanding of that world. But in order then to turn that knowledge into action, in order to apply that knowledge, that's a definition of engineering. Engineering is the application of science. It's the practice of putting science into action, and that's very much where we in the foundation believe that change can happen, and we're very supportive and excited about the UN Ocean Decade. I sit on the boards of the National Oceanographic Centre in the UK, and I sit on the UK's Marine Science national body for the government as well. And I'm very passionate about the oceans, but I'm even more passionate about taking that knowledge of the oceans and turning it into practice. And that's why we're having this session here today, and a session's about engineering. How do we turn ocean science into climate action? How do we take the amazing work which is done by so many people around the world and scale that and apply that? And why does that matter? Yeah, so if we think about why does that matter, we've got projections about what we call the ocean economy. We think about what the ocean economy is. The ocean economy consists of many, many things, from shipping, from our origins, but looking at things like offshore wind and other kind of energy, looking at cables. We're looking at the large proportion of the global population that lives on the coastline, and then how that coastline is going to change, and the kind of changes that we're going to need to make to that coastline in order to protect those populations. We're looking at fisheries, we're looking at aquaculture, we're looking at how we feed the world in the coming years. So all of these things are leading to this sort of doubling and more of the ocean economy, and that's going to need engineering skills. Now, engineers, and forgive me in this room, all the engineers who practice in this way, but there's been a history of engineering which has been a history of pouring concrete, a history of putting things out there that do the job, but they haven't necessarily been sympathetic to nature, to the way that coastlines work, to the way that we want to live our lives, to the way that humans interact with that coastline in a way that gives value to our lives. So we're looking at new types of engineering as well, and I think there's a huge opportunity in the work that's going forward in the Ocean Decade to really embed engineers into the discussions, to embed engineers into the learnings that are coming out of that, and to mobilize engineers to take their knowledge and to turn it into good engineering practice. And to do that at scale, we're going to need standards. We're going to really need to work on how do we standardize engineering practice, and we're going to need education as well. And if we look at engineering education, it hasn't changed that much, for 30, 40, 50 years. It really hasn't changed that much. So we're going to need the great universities of the world to start rethinking their curriculum, especially around ocean engineering. And I just want to give a sort of shout out to one of the Foundation's foresight reviews. So we published a review, the Foresight Review of Ocean Safety, which really sort of lays out what we think will be happening and the kind of considerations that are going to be needed for engineering into the future. So that's me, that's my pitch, and that's why I got up this morning to come here. And I'm really pleased to welcome our panelists here. So I'm just going to slickly move on the slides in the manner. So for everyone who's looking to put names on faces, and then we're going to kick off a panel discussion. And what I'm going to ask our panel to do is, as we go through, and I'll ask you the first question, could you also introduce yourself and just say, what you do and what your organisation is about and why you got up at 8 o'clock this morning to come, well, before then, well, why you thought this was a good thing to do as well. All right. So, and I'll start with Julian on my right, and we'll run through, and Robin will come to you at the end. Okay. So given this panel is to celebrate the importance of engineers, why are they so important, and what's the potential for bringing through action on climate? Julian, we'll start with you, please.
Thank you. So, good morning. My name is Julian Barbière. I work for the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. I'm head of marine science, of marine policy, and also a coordinator for the Ocean Decade. And I have my colleague Alison Clausen here, who's a deputy coordinator, and who is an engineer. So we've already started to create that interaction within the Decade Coordination Unit. But indeed, it could have been called a Decade of Ocean Engineering for Sustainable Development. And it is not called like this, but certainly we want to give space for that collaboration from the science to the engineering to the application side, because the whole philosophy of the Ocean Decade is really about transformative ocean science-based solutions. But that really implies that we're going to work with a whole wider body of people in communities that can really translate that science into specific solutions for fisheries, for coastal protection, for shipping, and so on. So I think one of the things that we know within the ocean science, and the Decade is basically now a pretty massive movement of cooperation. We have about 50 international programs that are addressing the 10 Decade challenges, from focus on pollution reduction, on protection of biodiversity, on ocean and climate aspects, food, but also the blue economy, which is a strong driver, but also requires specific solutions and knowledge to really, make the right choices in those areas. And then we also trying to build the infrastructure, because we know that the ocean is understudied. We are huge spaces of ocean where we don't have data. We don't know what's really happening at even depth, which are starting to be impacted by climate change, by human activities. So we need to build the observation capacity and the capacity to generate data and integrate that data and deliver that to end users and communities. Then we need to build capacities all around the world, because we know that these capacities are not fairly distributed. We have countries that have very little, science infrastructure. So that is I think the overall ambition. But I think we can really try to also break the silos between disciplines, and this is really one of the work that we do on a daily basis, and also really making sure that we generate knowledge, but doing this working with policymakers, with governments, local governments, who very often are also the ones actually implementing and financing some of those solutions, and also, of course, working with industry, and we're going to talk about that. I'm sure Jaco will mention that. But I think, how do we break those silos? I think we need to create those platforms for collaborative research, where we can really bring the scientific and the engineering communities together. I think we can work more on the data sharing and integration, because that again is an area where we need also engineers to help with specific the solutions in that space. I think in the area of technology development, there's certainly a lot of innovations, particularly, for example, in advancing sensors for the monitoring of marine ecosystems, and, for example, for improving fishing gear or renewable energy technologies. And that is really where we need to create this incubation within the ocean decade ecosystem. So I think we're not quite there yet, but certainly, we really want to make space within the ocean decade for the engineering community for creating that interaction with the science. And to do that, we're also working through a very coordinated approach. We have put up together a structure with thematic centers around the world and regional centers that are really working across the whole value chain, from knowledge generation to applications. And I think this provides an important entry point for some of those engineering communities to basically work at the regional or at the national level in developing specific solutions.
Thank you. Thank you, Julian. Let's move on then to Jaco. Do tell us about your work and what do you think there's a potential for engineering? Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ruth. So my name is Jaco Stemmet. I'm a regional business line director at Fugro, hydrographer by trade. Spent many years on a ship off the coasts, surveying and mapping the seabed. So that's really a passion for me. It's the ocean. Being involved in the ocean decade is really one of those things that gives you energy. I think you can feel like we're contributing to something bigger. Being a private sector company, I think important for me is that as private sector, that the question we should be asking is what problems are we helping to solve in today's world? I mean, that's ultimately what the responsibility, I think, collective responsibility that's required if we want to make changes as we're trying to do with the ocean decade. And as Julian mentioned as well, it's through partnerships. Private industry cannot do it alone. Public can't do it alone either. Communities can't do it alone. So it's really through the partnerships that this needs to happen. And I think at the start there was always reluctance for these partnerships, but without having it's not an add-on anymore. I think it's not an option. It has to happen in that sense. Fugro is a data and knowledge company. We work on the fact that we use data from the earth. And we use that as fundamental insights into what happens and how do we design, how do we build and do that safely. So as a geodata company, we want to obtain data, we want to process this, and then we want to give information on that. So linking on to your question around the technologies and the innovations, that all the tech is always nice, and I saw Robin, you've got some tech there behind you, so I was already attracted to that. But the fact is that we really it needs to solve a problem, and it needs to have drive a decision making in the end. It's data-driven decision making. I think is the phrase I think is quite important. So in that sense. Looking at the problem and then saying what is the tech that's needed, I think that's probably one way to use it as well, and that's what will drive it. Some of the things that I highlighted that really I think it's important when we're looking at improving the information and the monitoring of the ocean is things around greater acquisition. So we need to acquire more data. The seabed is only 25% mapped, so there's a big element in terms of data acquisition there. There are elements such as LiDAR, when we're doing mapping of the coastline. And I think a great example for me was the Tuvalu project that Fugro did a few years back. There you really have a case of a problem. Of an island state that really is in dire straits, really, in terms of it's going under. And the data is not there. And this is the kind of tech that then helps to make those data-driven decisions in the end. I think there's a lot happening in the eDNA space as well. A lot of things that we are currently, we call it day-to-day work, but you can then actually add on all these additional extras. And then, also I think just driving these technological advances, it's not a single market setup, so assets can be used into different markets, and I think that's the big advantage. If we can have the tech that can use across market, it doesn't just have to be for a commercial purpose, it can have additional add-ons.
Thank you so much, Jaco. Taylor, it's lovely to meet you, and please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you think engineering is important here.
Yeah, hi, I am Taylor Goelz. I'm a senior program manager of Ocean Climate at the Aspen Institute, which is a NGO think tank located in Washington, D.C., and we bring people together. That's the whole role of what the Aspen Institute does. We bring thought leaders from across sectors, from across the world together to address some of the toughest challenges of today. And my work is focused on that kind of ocean climate interaction. And because, as we all know, climate change is one of the biggest problems of today, and the ocean is one of our biggest solutions. When I was prepping for this panel, I thought it was really funny, the first question about, why are engineers so important? And my whole family is engineers. I married an engineer, so I'm the furthest thing from an engineer in my whole family. And it was a little ironic to me that and they told me very much why they think engineers are so important in the world. And so it was interesting for me to reflect on that kind of personally and professionally. And we have such an opportunity with the Ocean Decade, as people have mentioned. I also host a podcast called the Ocean Decade Show that I've had Jaco and Julian on, so I guess I need Ruth on it too, and Robin from afar, to have a full house. Because there's so many opportunities that lie ahead, and we have more and more technology, I think, than ever before to look into, figuring out what the problems are. That's the first issue, is figuring out what we need to do and then getting the right people together to solve it. And from everything from, the rise of AI in ocean science to uncrewed vessels to where are we going to place floating offshore wind? That engineering is such a source of solutions, and there's such an important stakeholder group that I think historically has been not as included in some of the discussions as well. That one of the things that I want to think about and emphasize with this is that engineers have great technical knowledge and they, provide important solutions, but they're also need to be part of broader conversations around issues of policy, around issues of, what basic science do we need, because they bring such a unique viewpoint. And so we're kind of filling up the house of stakeholders that we need to solve these problems, and engineers are just one of the really crucial, cards in our hand to address a lot of these challenges. And so at the Aspen Institute, what I've been thinking of a lot with this, we've been working on maritime shipping decarbonization, and that in and of itself is a people problem, but also an engineering problem. We need new engines, we need new ship designs, we need new ways to bunker fuel, we need new fuel. We need to produce fuel in a totally different way. And all of those are engineering challenges, but they're also people challenges. And so realizing that the science is really important, the data is really important, but the people behind it is also so crucial. All those great machines behind Robin couldn't do their jobs without the people behind it. And so I think some people forget that engineers are people. Sometimes I do when I'm, but they're such crucial parts of the conversation. And so I'm just really glad to get to chat a little bit about that today and just help bring us all together on this.
Thank you so much, Taylor. And I love what you're saying there. I'm not an engineer either, but engineers are my favorite people in the world because they fix things and make things happen, and they change the world. I'm always like, how are we going to change the world? We need some engineers in this room in order to make the change we're going to make. But engineers absolutely need to be part of the discussion about the problem, not just trying to fix, not receiving a brief that they fix. So yeah, absolutely, fantastic. So Robin, welcome. It must be very early where you are.
Yes, thank you. It's actually, it's pretty late. We're coming up on midnight here in Woods Hole. I'm in the David Center for Ocean Innovation. It's usually much busier, but because of the time, there aren't many people here tonight. So here at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, we study the ocean and how it affects Earth systems. Our goal is to understand this planet through the ocean. And my background specifically is in marine robotics and operations. So I've spent a good part of my career designing, building, and taking to sea autonomous underwater vehicles. I'm also applying that experience to research into renewable energy and sustainable mariculture, among other things. So there's a lot that happens here at Woods Hole. We have over 1,000 employees, scientists, engineers, ship operations, technicians, really incredible group of people, and none of this would happen without all of them. So, specific to engineering, I've heard some really great things already. I really like what I've heard about the need for collaboration between science, engineering, industry, finance, policy. We really all need to be talking together about how we need to make a change. But engineering specifically is critical to understanding our world and also making it a better place. One of my junior colleagues actually just reminded me that we as engineers are the people who get to deliver tangible options and solutions, especially to people who might otherwise be overwhelmed by climate change, right? If we can't bring options to the table, people aren't going to be able to make decisions for themselves. And engineering supports a path to realize our greatest ambitions, whatever those ambitions may be. So it's really important that we focus our efforts and are thoughtful about what it is we're doing and what it is we're bringing into the world. We provide the tools that enable basic science so we can understand the natural world and the challenges that we face. And then we look to applied research and engineering again to help solve those challenges once we understand them and bring actionable solutions to the table. So it's that combination of science and engineering working together here at Woods Hole that's really special and I think is one of our greatest strengths.
Thank you so much, Robin. And I really love what you said about the optimism, bringing some optimism to the table, about what's possible. And you've also reminded me, of course, that engineering enables science as well as applies science. It's all along that sort of pathway of knowledge. So Jaco, you talked a bit about data. Let's paint a picture a bit more. Could you tell us about some things that you might have done recently in Fugro that sort of, how you've deployed the data, how you brought some solutions to the table?
Yeah, so I think we mentioned partnership, and I heard that word a few times in the discussion. So it really shows the importance of partnerships, and it needs to be cross-sectoral. So not just in one sector. We need to move outside of our space. So I'm glad to hear Robin mentioning also finance. Sometimes we need to explain to finance what it is, what solution this is, and what it's going to bring to the world. And so maybe two partnerships in that sense where I can touch on. We have the way we've had some experience in, and the one is obviously with the Ocean Decade. I think it's a great example of an opportunity, a unique opportunity. We have a set time frame really to ignite it. It doesn't mean it's going to stop at 2030, but I think this is the opportunity to ignite these kind of partnerships between the private sector, and also bringing in the community aspect. The ocean space is really a space that's collectively needs to be owned by everybody. So hence the reason why it can't be one organization that really tackles it. And then, so as I mentioned with the Ocean Decade, what we've done in our capacities, we've gone the route of saying data is what we're known for. That's what we're a geodata company. So let's tackle that topic. And we've embedded one of our senior experts in data within IC UNESCO to really help drive what we call the corporate data group. and set up this group where the access to data is really the outcome that it wants to drive. And there's been some great strides being made already. Some large international companies, so companies that are involved in data that either acquire it or use it or distribute the data to really create that platform where it can be accessible to all of society. So for the scientific community, for public, for researchers, and making that data available so that it's not just stuck in someone's server in the back room of an office. So that's one example of a partnership, and it's still growing, and it's still has the potential to become much larger. I think the second one is shipping related. So just linking on to what Taylor was saying in what they're doing, and she, as you mentioned, there's so many aspects, and we have different types of shipping. So you have the containerized, and you have that's the one we often gravitate to. We think of big container ships. In our space, we work with geophysical survey vessels, geotechnical. So it's a very, I'd call it a bit of a smaller niche market. And there we've looked at how do we decarbonize from our aspect. Vessels are large, assets are big. That's where the big impact will lie. And we're fortunate enough to there. Actually, through the Dutch government, there's a project called Menens. So loosely translated from Dutch, it says methanol as an energy step towards zero emission in Dutch shipping. So it's a conglomeration of various Dutch companies, shipping, and Fugro is leading that, and it's about creating methanol as a fuel source. So they've made some good progress in terms of how do we use it. It's now been set up that in the coming months now, we will change out 2 of the engines on one of these vessels. And this is a vessel that works consistently in the offshore wind farms. So it's working out there. We actually have to create a little gap in its schedule because the offshore wind market is very, very busy at the moment. But that change out will happen, and being a data company, we want to monitor it. We want to check. So we have 2 engines diesel, 2 engines methanol, and then this will help drive the technology. So it's 2 different aspects in terms of partnerships, and the one is with the shipping, and one with the data. But I think if we look at an expansion of we want to expand also the pool of data generators and users. Then, it has to be a partnership.
Super, thanks so much, Jaco. I'm going to go over to Robin. We're doing a show and tell at the moment, Robin. And could you tell us a little bit about the kind of projects you're working on that are supporting climate action?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the context of understanding climate change, right, we're trying to understand systems over huge time spans at a global scale. And to achieve this, we have tremendous coverage from satellite systems and land-based observation. But to collect data in the ocean is incredibly challenging. It's really hard to do. The marine environment is very unforgiving. It's hard to transmit data. It's really hard to communicate through the ocean. And so to actualize this, we're building sensors and platforms that can provide sustained monitoring above and below the ocean surface, and to access some of the hardest reaches to place in our the hardest to reach places in our ocean. We need highly specialized tools, and so I can't take credit for this vehicle behind me, but I'm working with some colleagues on WHOI right behind me here. So WHOI was designed and built here at WHOI, and one of the interesting things about it is it has a lightweight tether for communication, and it's about the diameter of a human hair and can provide reach for kilometers. And so we can communicate with this vehicle over that link in real time, and that allows us to access places that are really challenging to get to with conventional tethered underwater vehicles. One of the other things that's really interesting about this vehicle is the nose of it opens up like 2 bay doors, and there's a manipulator inside additional cameras, and so you can actually interact with the seafloor, take samples, perform intervention, and get really close to items that you want to investigate. So that's a pretty unique tool that we have here at the institution. There aren't a lot of other resources like that. WHOI has helped with research into our past, looking at the origins of life and biology at deep sea vents, but also allows us to research climate change and look into the future of our planet and our time here on Earth. So I should say that we're also not just supporting exploration and research, we're also working on engineering solutions to unlock renewable energy, measure carbon flux in the ocean, rehabilitate coral reefs, and enable sustainable kelp farming, just to name a few things that we're doing here. So engineering has to be part of the solution as well as enabling exploration and discovery.
Thank you so much, Robin. That's absolutely fascinating. And we're all very appreciative of the WHOI and WHOI alliteration that you've got going on there at Woods Hole. Taylor, I'm sorry about the show and tell that you just had to follow, because that's kind of really cool. What Robin's doing is really cool, but you're doing really cool stuff too. You're bringing together people in innovative ways. So perhaps you could just tell us about the kind of approaches that you're using to try and break down those disciplines and bring people together in that kind of way.
Yeah, I know it's a shame going after Robin. At least he doesn't have toys here in person. Then I'd just have to walk out of the room. But I think one of the things I've been thinking about in relation to our work is on maritime shipping decarbonization is we're trying to create demand signals to spur engineers to be innovative. So we have a project that we launched this year at Aspen alongside major companies that use container shipping services, Amazon, IKEA, Patagonia, called Zemba. So it doesn't rhyme. We don't have another thing that rhymes with it, but it's still a pretty fun acronym. So the Zero Emission Maritime Buyers Alliance. And so this group we have 26 plus companies now from around the world have put out a request for proposals, an RFP for zero emission shipping services to be delivered in 2025, which if you know anything about maritime shipping decarbonization, there are no ships today that run on zero emission fuel. And so this is almost a challenge to the industry, and it's a forward procurement mechanism because we know that none of those solutions are available today. And so we have put out this RFP with these companies and said to the industry, show us what you got. Show us how you can help these companies reduce their emissions. Show us your progress that you're making towards meeting your own decarbonization goals, the International Maritime Organization's decarbonization goals. And we got our bids back just a couple weeks ago, and they're looking good. I think I was about 50-50 that we would get nothing or that we would get, some people trying to sell us, snake oil or something like that. But we have been so pleased with the work of these companies that, shipping is probably in the single percentage of their carbon emissions, but they are willing to put their money where their mouth is and help fund the engineering innovations that need to happen in the maritime shipping sector. And so, like Jaco was saying, this is just container shipping. There's so many other segments of shipping. There's, the vessels that we need to go to offshore wind facilities. One thing that I've thought is silly for a few years is that, we're building out these great offshore wind, this clean energy, and we're getting there with dirty ships. And decarbonizing the big ships is the hardest thing. And so littler ones should be easier, especially when you are going point to point, that you can do batteries for that sort of thing. I just think within the ocean space, the evolution of battery technology is going to change the way that we do everything, the way that we're able to use data, transform data, the way that we're able to share data to really get information to people. And beyond our work in the maritime shipping sector overall, there's just so many innovations out there right now. Wind assist, so in some cases, people are putting giant sails on ships again to take efficiency measures, and while that won't get you all the way across the ocean in most places anymore, it can help reduce the amount of fuel you're using now and then reduce the amount you're using later. There's new engines coming online that are working on totally different types of fuels, and we have to, engineers have had to figure out, how do we do this? How do we make this safely? And then we work with Lloyd's Register a lot, and so how do you then, make specifications for a ship so that it's safe for the people operating on board? That in a lot of cases, like with these engineers designing this, people's lives are in their hand at the end of the day. That you're out on these ships for days, weeks, months, and you don't want anything to go. You don't want anything to go wrong. And so it's about advancing climate solutions, and it's about helping make sure that the people on the ground are actually able and willing to use this technology. That the UN Global Compact Group has done a lot with seafarer retraining, and they're working on that for maritime shipping decarbonization to make sure that the people actually serving on the ships can use the new technologies. I've been trying to get the maritime universities in the United States interested in doing this because only 2 of them currently offer any sort of decarbonization trainings or classes. So that's something that I'm really passionate about going forward. But there's just, I've been really heartened seeing all of this in the shipping sector, especially because it's the oldest and dirtiest of, they use the sludge at the bottom of the barrel currently, and they've been making changes, and that's been really exciting. We're hopefully inspiring engineers to think about the next generation of what this needs to look like.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taylor. It's so interesting, and like you say, it's been one of those industries which has been very difficult to crack. But as Jaco said as well, there's so many small vessels out there. There's so many, it's a very rich landscape of vessels needing to adapt new fuels, and a lot of that will come from the bottom up. Very interesting. Now we're kind of cruising into our last 10 minutes of this session, so I'm going to turn back to Julian. And you talked about silos and in your opening remarks. So I wonder if we could just we'll take one final round of comments before we finish. So Julian, could you maybe talk to us a little bit about the sectors, the sort of breakdown between the sectors, but also looking ahead for the ocean decades? What do you think we should be standardizing? What are the key things that we might be doing from the ocean decade as we go forward?
Thanks, Ruth. Indeed, so I really think that we need this innovation in the areas of engineering and technology and science in all the 10-decade challenges. And, indeed, the decade can be also a platform for starting to discuss what are some of those best practices and standards in specific sectors. Just a few examples. We are starting to colonize the marine environment with infrastructure, whether for renewable energy, for cable, for pipelines. And I think, again, there's a need to also ensure that those structures are minimizing disturbance in the marine ecosystem. So that will also require specific solutions, ensuring integrity of the infrastructure, but also being able to minimize any potential impact. I think in the area of food production and aquaculture, certainly there's a need to work in defining what are some of those technologies that are going to put us on a more sustainable seafood production pathways, whether it's for example, in the design of specific structure, the water circulation systems to ensure that water quality is preserved. Of course, we're here at the COP, so a lot of the issues are also about coastal resilience, and I think, again, we need strong standardized approach for coastal and marine engineering to enhance resilience against climate change, whether it's in the area, for example, in developing standardized methods for controlling erosion, but also working in integrating nature-based solutions into some, this hard engineering, which is not always the best solution. So I think there's a need to really work across this array of technical hard engineering and green engineering. And then Robin mentioned the observations and the data there. I think this is still a major challenge. One of the ambition of a decade is to create this interoperable data system. So basically not putting all data under one roof, but really making sure that those different databases, data depository that are helping us to understand the ocean are more interoperable and allow for this integration of data. But to do that, we also need data engineers to help us define what are those standards that will allow this interoperability. And then indeed in the area of observation, We have a global ocean observing system, which is the global platform for generating knowledge and collecting routinely, systematically data across the water column in all ocean space. But again, we need to use technology to automate some of this data collection and that also applies to seabed mapping, where we only have 25% of seabed mapped, and the ambition is to get to 100% by 2030. We've gone from 6% to 25% in the last 6 years, but we're not going to do it without technology and some of those major investments to help us. So I think this is some of those challenges, and one way we generate action in the decade is through a regular call for decade actions, and at this stage, we haven't seen too much actions led by engineering associations or communities, and that's something that we really need to change. So that's also a message we would like to convey through our collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julian. There's some really strong messages there, and I'll probably use them to wrap up in a short while. Jaco, tell us about public-private partnerships as well, and where you see those will help us.
Yeah, I think they're pretty essential to really get some of the results. And as I mentioned earlier, I think having data-driven decision making. So when we have coastal resilience examples, we really need that data to be able to make the decision. And policy gets, unfortunately for all of us, we're in the hands of politicians often when it comes to what decisions are being made and how do we influence policy. And I guess that's what the whole COP is about, is to get that policy on the table and then move it along. As private companies, it often doesn't move at the same pace as what we would like to move. We have a different pace sometimes than a policy pace. But I think that really is where the needle movers are at the moment. And I think if we can get some one of the aspects that for me personally is a driver also with the Ocean Decade is we really want to see some tangible results, because that's what gives people confidence. And then when investors see see such examples, that confidence generates more income or more funds. So it all has a knock-on effect.
Thank you so much, Jaco. Robin, just going to go over to you and your exciting, innovative mind over there. What do you see as the great new technologies coming? I think you've done some polar research in the past. What do you see coming down that's going to help us?
Yeah, so I think right now we're using autonomous and remotely operated vehicles to give us access to places that are beyond the reach of human observation. These robots can access challenging environments to map the seafloor, characterize ocean properties in the water column, and this means we can use them to map freshwater outflow from glaciers or detect changes in water temperature or directly investigate areas of interest where processes are taking place. I'm actually really excited to be going with the team to Greenland to take NUI up to study some glaciers next summer. We'll be looking at glacial retreat and studying some of those processes. But those tools are sort of localized, right? And we need other tools that include gliders and floats, which can profile the depths of the ocean and then transmit data back to shore. But really, these systems are able to spend a much longer time at sea collecting data and offer insight into longer-term processes. So these systems have been used to create global observation networks. They help us understand the increasing heat content of our oceans, understand global ocean dynamics, and help us develop better models for forecasting. But we need many, many more assets deployed in the sea to collect the data that we need to understand what's happening in our oceans. So this will improve our ability to predict extreme weather events, provide regional climate disaster warnings, inform agricultural planning, assess the global carbon budget, and ultimately forecast and assess regional and global security. Like, this is a really big deal. But we need to set forth a really audacious effort to enable global sensing at that scale. As our president, Peter Dominical, has laid out with the Ocean Vital Signs Network, we need distributed sensing enabled by low-cost platforms that can operate for months to years at a time, and we need this at a much greater scale than exists now. I think this means we need to find ways to engage with the commercial sector to realize these sensing platforms at lower cost through economies of scale and for data use beyond the reach of the research community as well. But we need to make sure we do so with integrity and in a way that preserves unbiased research, of course, which is where the real value in all of this lies. The knowledge we can unlock through a better understanding of our oceans will be really powerful in helping us to make better decisions moving forward. But we need help beyond just the research community to get there, I believe. Yeah. From a technical perspective, Taylor, I think you mentioned power, right? That's a huge one that we struggle with. Batteries don't last long enough to support long duration propulsion or high powered sensors, and onboard energy capture and charging are both really difficult to do at the sea. So new power systems, low power computation and sensing is likely to be critical to making this vision a reality.
Thank you, Robin. I think
so sorry, I could keep going on.
I know, and it's a fantastic vision of the future and the future of the science as well, which we're very excited about. Taylor, I'm going to give the last words to you to give us a reason to be optimistic as we go forward.
Yeah, I think we have recognition now of the multiple crises that are at hand. You know, we have the climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, you know, better bringing in issues of equity and justice into all of the work that we do. Just recognizing all of that gives me hope. We're addressing problems in new ways. We're bringing new stakeholders to the table. The Ocean Decade is doing a huge role in doing that. And we have more and more data than ever before. It's figuring out how to use it, how to apply it, but we're on an upward path that we have all the tools we need. What the biggest challenge, I think, and it'll still be optimistic, I promise. Going back to what I said at the beginning, is making sure the people are still centered in this, that we need the best technology, we need the best engineering, but we also need the best people in these really important roles and to bring people to the table. And that's why I'll always have a job, is bringing people together is hard, and getting people to do hard things is a necessary skill no matter how great of the technology is. So I'll leave us there because I've been that stressed person in the back holding up the sign saying, wrap it up.
Super. So that's a fantastic note to end on. I just want to reflect back on what Julian said as well. The Ocean Decade is a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for knowledge, but it's also a huge opportunity for solutions. And let's get to the end of the decade with the standards, with the knowledge, with the practice that we need in order to make the changes that we need to make. And really looking forward to that. So thank you to everyone. Thank you in the room. Thank you to the panelists for getting up early. And thank you to Robin for staying up late. Most appreciated. Bye-bye.